So today what we're going to work on is the inverse of a square matrix. So if matrix A is an n by n matrix, which means it's a square, so we have n by n, it's the same thing. So we're talking about a square matrix. There may exist a matrix inverse, remember that's the inverse symbol, that -1, such that when you do A, the matrix A times the inverse of matrix A, or the inverse of matrix A times A, so it's commutative, you will get the identity. So let's write down this means inverse. And remember this means identity. Identity matrix, or of order n, which is an n by n. Okay, so we're going to show that matrix A and matrix B are inverses. So remember, in order for them to be an inverse, when I multiply them, I have to get the identity. So we're going to multiply matrix A times matrix B. Okay, so we're going to do 1 times -3 plus 4 times 1. And then we'll do -1 times -3 plus -3 times 1. And then on the other side, we'll do 1 times -4 plus 4 times 1. And then we'll do -1 times -4 plus -3 times 1. Okay, so we have -3 times 1 is -3, plus 4 times 1 is 4, so that's -3 plus 4 is 1. -1 times 3 is 3, plus -3 times 1 is -3, so 3 plus -3 is 0. 1 times -4 is -4, plus 4, which is 0, and 4 plus -3 is 1. So notice that when I multiply my two matrices together, then I get the identity element. So therefore, they are inverses of each other. So this should also work the other way around. So I'm just going to erase this here. So when I multiply B times A, because remember, multiplication is not commutative. But when I multiply my inverses, they are commutative. So I'm just going to rewrite this. So it's going to be matrix B, I'm going to put first, which is -3, 1, -4, 1. And matrix A, which is 1, 4, -1, -3. All right, so now I'm going to multiply B times A. Okay, so it's going to be -3 times 1 plus -4 times -1. And 1 times 1 plus 1 times -1. And then we're going to have -3 times 4 plus -4 times -3. And 1 times 4 plus 1 times -3. Okay, equals. All right, so -3 times 1 is -3 plus -4 times -1 is +4. -3 plus 4 is 1. 1 times 1 is 1 plus 1 times -1 is -1. That's 0. -3 times 4 is 12, and -3 times -3 is, sorry, that's -12, is 12, so that's 0. And 1 times 4 is 4 plus -3, and that is 1. So also we get the identity element when I multiply them. Okay, so if you don't have a non-square matrix, so let's say you have a 3 by 2, a 4 by 2, a 2 by 3, that does not have an inverse. So it has to be a square matrix in order for it to be an inverse. So non-squares do not have an inverse. Okay, so now how do we find the inverse by hand? Okay, so remember, when I multiply my A, matrix A, times my inverse of my matrix A, I have to get my identity, and in this case, right? It's an identity of 2. So this is what I know, that matrix A, which is 1, -1, 4, -3, times the inverse, which I don't know, but I know it has to be a 2 by 2. So it's x sub 1, 1, right? Row 1, column 1. And the next one would be row 1, column 2. And then I would have x row 2, column 1, and x row 2, column 2. And that has to give me my identity, which is going to be 1, 0, 0, 1. Okay, so I'm just going to move this up. All right, so now I'm going to actually multiply these here. So I have 1 times x11 plus 4 times x plus 2, 1. And that has to give me 1. Right, it has to give me this value here. And then when I do -1 x11 plus -3 x21, that has to give me my 0. So I actually just made a system of equations here. All right, so now we have to do the other side. So when I do 1 x sub 1, 2 plus 4 times x sub 2, 2, that has to give me 0. And -1 x sub 1, 2 plus -3 times x sub 2, 2, that has to give me 1. Okay, so I'm going to solve the system of equations here. So I can add these. These are opposites here, so they cancel. So I have -4 minus 3 is 1, so it's 1 x sub 2, 1 equals 1. So I have x sub 2, 1 equals 1. So in my matrix right now, this is what I know. So in my matrix, so 2, 1, which would be row 2, column 1, that's a 1. All right, so now I'm going to solve. I'm going to use this here, and I'm going to solve for x sub 1, 1. So that is x sub 1, 1 plus 4 times 1 equals 1. So x sub 1, 1 is equal to -3. So this is -3 here. Okay, so let's go on to the other side over here. So these cancel when I add. So I have x sub 2, 2 is equal to 1. So let's put that in, x sub 2, 2. So that's row 2, column 2 is 1. And then I'm going to plug it into the top equation. So that would be x sub 1, 2 plus 4 times 1 equals 0. So x sub 1, 2 is equal to -4. So that's row 1, column 2 is -4. So this is my inverse. Okay, so let's flip it over. All right, so another way to find the inverse is using row operations. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take our matrix and the inverse. Right, my inverse is going to be 1, 0, 0, 1. And I'm going to join them together. So it'll look like this. So it'll be 1, -1, 4, -3. And I'm going to put dot, dot, dot. And I'm going to put the inverse right next to it. So it'll be 1, 0, 0, 1. All right, so what we want to do is get this side over here in row echelon form. So I want to have a 1, 0, 0, 1. So I basically want to get this over here. Right, so I'm going to use row operations. So I can, I want to make this is already a 1, so I want to make this a 0. So I can add row 1 plus row 2. So it's going to be row 1 plus row 2. So row 1 is 1, 4, dot, 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 1, 0, -1, -3, 0, 1. So I get 0, 1, dot, 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 1, 1. So that's my row 2. So row 1 is going to stay the same. So it's 1, 4, dot, 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 1, 0. And row 2 is 0, 1, 1, 1. All right, so now what I need to do is make this number here, this 4. And look, this is already a 1, so that's nice. I need to make this 4 a 0. So I'm going to multiply row 2 by -4 and add it to row 1. So -4 row 2 plus row 1. -4 row 2 would be 0, -4, dot, 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 -4, -4, Row 1 is 1, 4, 1, 0. So I get 1, 0, dot, dot, dot. Negative 3, negative 4. And that is my new row. Just going to move everything up. That is my new row 1. Okay, so row 1 is 1, 0, dot, dot, dot. Negative 3, negative 4. And 0, 1, 1, 1. So notice I have this in row echelon form. And now what this is over here, that's my inverse. So my inverse is negative 3, negative 4, 1, 1. Okay, so that's it, and we'll practice in class tomorrow. Have a good night.